Immortals attacked and all through the chaos Fizzle killed Mord and his spouse simply as he became to kill Levant. Sumian intervened. Even though the dagger had wounded Levant, human beings arrived in time to stop him, currently seeing the metropolis in crisis. He couldn't live lower back any further and determined to assist Haken listens, after which publicizes that collectively they will remove all of the immortals and shop Istanbul. In the meantime Zay brings Ela to Haken, pronouncing she has something to confess. Hesitant however determined, Ela admits that she has become an immortal and is below Phil's manipulate. He can control her thoughts and make her do something he wishes. Simply as she speaks, Faisal takes manipulate once more, forcing her to act in opposition to them. Then he calls Haken and warns him that if he desires to shop Ela he should convey the dagger to the location he specifies. Figuring out the hazard, all of them agree that Ela should be contained someplace secure earlier than she will harm anybody else. Blindfolded, she is taken to a stable residence and locked in a room for her protection. In the meantime Haken and the team collect to plan a plan. Levant, now absolutely dedicated, assures them that he'll stand via way of means of Haken regardless of what. With all his electricity he vows to combat the immortals till the quit. While Faisal returns domestic, he unearths Ru'aya useless once more pissed off and determined, he turns to Pianmgan, who subsequently concurs to assist him, but they call for Ela in return. After a few ideas Phil concurs, handing her over however simplest in the event that they help him in acquiring the Protector's blood. They receive the deal, placing their plan into movement. In the meantime Han trains fastidiously, getting ready each element of his plan to kill Faisal at once, but he tells Zay now no longer to accompany him, insisting that he can't have the funds for to lose her. She refuses at first, however Haken convinces her via way of means of assigning her an vital challenge to shield Ela. He assures her that he trusts nobody else. With this obligation Zaab subsequently concurs and heads to the secure residence. At that moment Ela all of sudden lunges at K, her actions speedy and competitive. Earlier than he can react she forces him right into a combat, her assaults relentless. OK struggles to shield himself, stuck off protect via way of means of her unexpected hostility. The depth of the combat escalates however simply as matters take a risky flip. Zaynep rushes in without hesitation. She throws herself into the conflict, pulling K far from Ela's draw close. Breathless however decided, she takes a step lower back, making sure Ela is securely trapped on the opposite aspect. Han arrives on the bridge in which Phil had summoned him, however something feels off as he carefully executes his plan. A surprising noise catches his interest. While he investigates he realizes Levant is lacking. Earlier than he can make feel of it, Faisal video calls him at the display screen. Levant is tied up and held captive. Faisal coldly warns Han if he desires to see his brother alive he should now no longer attempt any hints. He should now no longer carry the dagger as an alternative. He's to accumulate his blood and a island are available to the bridge on my own. Now after the video name ends Zaab arrives and all of them acquire to talk their subsequent pass. Haken, packed with discomfort, proclaims that he cannot lose his brother due to the fact he has already misplaced his whole lone circle of relatives. The others try and cause with him, however he refuses to pay attention. Ultimately they don't have any preference however to go alongside together along with his selection. After that they attain the bridge, but in place of Haken Faisal asks Ceylon at hand over the blood. As quickly as she arrives Levant makes an surprising pass as he continues the talismanic blouse for himself, revealing that he changed into running with Faisal all alongside. His real aim had constantly been the blouse, now no longer supporting the Protector's salon. Shocked via way of means of his betrayal attempts to grab the blouse from him with inside the battle. Levant by chance stabs her with inside the stomach. She collapses, loss of life. Instantaneous chaos erupts as gunfire breaks out. Haken is hit with inside the shoulder and earlier than anyone can prevent him Levant escapes with the blouse, leaving them in turmoil with inside the basement. The closing unswerving ones treat Haken's wounds. While he regains attention he learns that Ceylon is long gone. OK is likewise useless and there may be no hint of Layla. Crushed with grief and anger he struggles to manner the entirety. In the meantime Levant, now wearing the blouse, walks right into an online casino and robs the area while a person attempts to shoot him. In retaliation the bullet has no effect, Levent, proving his newfound invincibility, kills the person without hesitation and leaves with all of the money. On the opposite facet, Copyright and Morgan try and manipulate Layla's thoughts, however she refuses to obey. Pissed off, Morgan reminds her that she belongs to them now and should comply with his instructions. Fizzle all over again effectively revives Ruaya. She comes back to existence extremely joyful at her go back. In the meantime, Haken searches for any hint of Levent whilst wandering via the metropolis. He all at once meets a person who claims to recognize approximately Levent's beyond. He exhibits that Levent had as soon as been concerned in a street coincidence. However, in truth his own circle of relatives is dying, changed into due to his moves. He had constantly been a fraud, dwelling a reckless existence. A gang had burned down his residence, killing his dad and mom, whilst Levent changed into out indulging in his pleasures, absolutely ignorant of the tragedy unfolding at domestic. Haken contacts Zeynep, who has distanced herself from the entirety and is now centered on her research. While he visits her, she to start with refuses to speak. However, while he tells her approximately Sun and K's deaths, she will become deeply saddened. Stepping out of doors, she listens to him as he explains the state of affairs and pleads for her assist, but Zabe blames him for the whole thing, pronouncing his obsession with revenge caused all of this Haken harm via way of means of her phrases. Concurs that she's proper. Zabe then well known shows that Levent need to have a few connection to the nearby financial institution due to the fact he may want to assault any financial institution. However, he especially makes use of that small financial institution for theft. Listening to this, Han feels a glimmer of wish as Zion appears inclined to rejoin the group. However, she quick shuts it down, pronouncing she is leaving for Oxford for a studies mission and could by no means go back. Pissed off, Haken storms off. Haken then calls Sartor, explaining the state of affairs and soliciting for the financial institution managers cope with. He gives the statistics and Hoan arrives on the place most effective to discover Levent brutally torturing a person it seems to be the very character liable for his mother and father death. Hoan enters with a gun, however Levent smugly reminds him that bullets cannot damage him due to the blouse. Haken but is not aiming for him due to the fact his cognizance is on revenge. Their argument will become a violent brawl with the financial institution proprietor seizing the hazard to break out. In the end, Hoan manages to subdue Levent later. Whilst using Levent asks approximately the subsequent step of the plan. Hoan states that they need to seize and kill Phil and rescue Wheela from his draw close. Levent reassures him that now he's going to Haken irrespective of what. In the meantime, Wheela is being brutally tortured via way of means of Copyright and Mgan. They push her to her limits, breaking her spirit. Subsequently takes complete manipulate of her thoughts, leaving her absolutely subconscious. Whilst Levent returns to the drugstore basement, Isra is stunned to peer him without hesitation. She factors a gun at him equipped to shoot, however Hoan steps in from in the back of it, attempting to calm her down. He explains that Levent has modified as he is now no longer the identical anymore. The whole thing he did earlier then became simply to avenge his mother and father. However, Isra refuses to agree with him, accusing Haken of being blind simply due to the fact Levent is his brother. She insists that Haken by no means hesitates to move towards all people now no longer even his allies. However, in the end she falls silent. Later Ela returns unexpected. Haken seeing her, he cannot conceal his comfort and asks in which she has been all this time. Mila well known shows that the Immortals had captured her, however she slightly controlled to break out. She insists that they need to discover a surely secure location for her due to the fact in the long run most effective Phil has the proper to determine her destiny. Haken instructs Levent to live again and watch over Ezra whilst he's taking her out of doors for a few clean air. After a while, Haken launches an assault on Faisal's residence. However, earlier than he can get to him, Ruaya comes establishing Hearthplace on Haken, but Haken is carrying the talismanic blouse, making him invulnerable. Seeing the state of affairs, Flip risky Faisal and Ruaya fast get away as they pressure away. Ruaya stops the automobile after accomplishing a secure website online. She furiously blames Faisal for the entirety, shouting that every one of this is going on due to him and that he nonetheless hasn't been capable of kill. Haken triumph over with anger. She forcefully takes Faisal's vehicle and drives off, leaving him stranded. Haken asks Sela if she is hiding something from him. Once more he reminds her that remaining time she saved secrets and techniques from him too. However, Ela insists that it is unique this time, as she sincerely would not Don't forget what took place to her. She guarantees that if she recollects whatever she can be able to inform him, but she is lying. In the meantime, Ezra is going to fulfill Zeynep, who's approximately to depart for London. However, Zeynep refuses to pay attention to her and informs the bus decided to depart the entirety. At the back of tomorrow, Hila gets a name from Par, who asks approximately the mission she has assigned. Hila bluntly says that she cannot do it anymore and asks to fulfill her, and character Haken overhears her conversation. Later, Hila and Par meet at a secluded spot. However, earlier than they could communicate, Haken abruptly assaults Par from at the back of he violently stabs her with inside the chest, making sure she would not live on. Alternatively, Zayn modifications her thoughts and returns after regaining a few misplaced reminiscences. She heads immediately to the drugstore basement and is bowled over to see Levent there. She failed to assume him to return back. Levent then tells her approximately the reviews he received on Faisal. He claims his supply showed the entirety to confirm Zeynep is going to test herself while she arrives. Phil notices her right now, however, would not appear amazed. He evenly asks approximately Hila's circumstance and tells her that Hila is beneath someone else's manipulate now Faisal, but says that he in no way meant to harm Hila. He simplest desired to deliver his spouse returned to lifestyles. However, matters failed to move as deliberate. Zayn satirically feedback that Ruaya ought to be pleased with him. However, Faisal disagrees. He bitterly famous that Ruaya took the entirety from him, his enterprise, his energy, even Hila. He then warns that an assault on Haken is impending. Alarmed, Zayn rushes to the region wherein Han and Hila are staying, best to witness something stunning, that Hila is attacking Han. He isn't even sporting his talismanic blouse for safety. Without hesitation, Zeynep intervenes, attacking Hila from in the back of in self-protection. She stabs her, killing her immediately. Han is devastated. He falls to his knees, not able to technique what simply passed off. Tears circulate down his face as he struggles to realize the entirety. Zayn too stands there in surprise, crushed and burdened through what she simply did. When becomes absolutely remoted, misplaced with inside the mind of Hila. He would not touch absolutely everyone and refuses to satisfy absolutely everyone. In frustration, he throws his talismanic blouse and dagger into the hearthplace as though seeking to rid himself of the entirety. In the meantime, Zayn tries to determine out wherein he would possibly have long gone. Soon Aurora later reveals him at the rooftop of a constructing with inside the Grand Bazaar. She reminds him that he's the protector accountable for safeguarding Istanbul. However, Haken, damaged and hopeless, says that he could not even guard his cherished ones. How can he guard the whole metropolis? To reignite his spirit, Zeynep suggests him a video wherein Ruaya declares that Faisal's enterprise is now making an investment in paramedical workforce and medication. She warns that that is a part of their new plan, but Haken stays detached, announcing he now no longer cares. He leaves without some other phrase. As he walks away, Zeynep choices up his dagger and blouse, noticing the abnormal mark forming at the cloth. Is curious. Approximately the image opens an old e-book, however it gives no beneficial records. She then recollects that a surviving member of the family. She realizes her assets had been stolen. As she seems round, she sees Haken, who has taken them. Haken calmly asks if Ruaya is about to get hold of the components that very night. Time aggravated, Zeynep tells him they want to behave speedy. However, Haken insists on dealing with matters by myself, as he might not permit absolutely everyone else die due to him. He pleads together along with her to agree with him. Simply this, as soon as and now no longer comply with him. In the meantime, Ruaya manipulates Levent into falling for her, securing his loyalty. Later, as she leaves her workplace, Haken secretly follows her. However, simply as he's lasting, she all at once disappears. Earlier than he can react, he gets a name from Faisal. Faisal invitations him for a very last assembly. Hawan is aware of it as entice, however goes besides organized for a combat. Whilst he arrives on the place, Faisal ambushes him, blaming him for the entirety. He rants that Ruaya left him due to Hawan and that he'll now take away him and in the end deliver her lower back. Hawan challenges him, announcing that if he absolutely believes he can win, he have to launch him from the entice and combat. Pretty recognizing a loose bolt close by, Hawan secretly eliminates it and frees himself without losing a second. He launches an assault on Faisal, and the two interact in a brutal combat. However, Phil manages to grab Haken's dagger and moves at him. Haken attempts to defend himself, however the blade makes a small reduce on his arm. For a second each guy's freeze in surprise. Haken is carrying the talismanic Blouse he should not be injured. However, once they examine his tattoo, it begins a evolved sparkling fizzle. Genuinely disturbed through what he simply witnessed, steps lower back worry creeping into his eyes. Crushed, he panics and flees, leaving Haken standing there, understanding that something a long way larger is at play. Ezra and Zeynep go to the closing surviving craftsman who made the talismanic blouse. Whilst he sees Haken's tattoo, he without delay acknowledges its, which means he explains that the mark is a caution. Whilst an immortal and a protector shape a romantic bond, the protector's powers weaken, making him prone. Ezra and Zeynep are greatly surprised through this revelation. They start to piece matters collectively and recognize that Hoen's abilities have dwindled due to Levent stating with Ruaya, as he is likewise from the Protector's bloodline. In the meantime, Fall witnesses Ruaya and Levent collectively, and rage consumes him. Whilst he in the end confronts Ruaya, he admits that he has been blinded through love and has even got down to kill Haken for her. However, in truth she have been the use of him all along. She dispatched Haken after him whilst secretly getting near Levent without a hint of guilt. Ruaya tells him she feels no disgrace for what she did. Whilst Faisal needs to recognize her authentic intention, she coldly states that she plans to do what he's too afraid to perform. Then without hesitation she orders him to depart, threatening to name safety if he does not. Humiliated and defeated, Faisal has no preference however to stroll away. In the meantime, Haken infiltrates Faisal's constructing with Zeynep following carefully at the back of. However, earlier than she will be able to attain him, Morgan spots her and captures her, understanding she's in chance. Haken rushes to assist and moves Morgan with the dagger, but to his surprise the assault has no impact. Morgan without difficulty escapes. Wondering quick, Haken and Zay control to entice him enter a room. Earlier than making their getaway, they take safe haven with inside the pharmacy, wherein Zeynep has a tendency to Haken's wounds. However, their second of respite is interrupted whilst Phil enters. He does not appear competitive this time. Alternatively, he claims he desires to assist keeping up the components. He says he has come to provide it to them. Faisal explains to Haken that the components is a lethal weapon able to drying up all living organisms along with flowers. Ruaya has been generating it on a large scale. The usage of Levent's blood. Knowing the grave threat, Haken makes a decision to quickly best friend with Faisal simply. Then Levent calls. Haken needs to understand wherein he's in the way. He may want to betray his type via way of means of siding with their enemies. Levent does not reply without delay and rather tells him they need to meet quickly, promising to give an explanation for the whole lot. As Han contemplates his subsequent flow, he realizes he need to regain his blouse and powers. Zeynep shows they need to are searching for out the Oracle. While Han asks what the Oracle is, he learns that these had been those who via historical research infused electricity into the talismans to combat in opposition to the immortals. Now they leave. Levent refuses, arguing that humanity is already doomed. Corruption and evil have ate up the sector simply as they took his dad and mom away. Haken accuses him of questioning like an immortal. However, Levent insists that the immortals are proper and humanity merits its destiny. He's bored with constantly being at the dropping facet as tensions upward thrust. The war of words turns right into a fierce struggle. In spite of his efforts, Haken is finally overpowered. Levent knocks him subconscious, leaving him inclined. Zeynep arrives simply in time and facilitates Haken regain attention. She informs him that Levent has already left, but Haken stays calm, revealing that that is precisely what he desired. He had secretly positioned a tracker on Levent's jacket which could lead them without delay to the method's area. Zeynep is relieved, and on the equal time are the best ones who can repair that electricity. Haken, Zeynep and Faisal got down to locate the Oracle. Upon assembly them, the Oracle makes use of the dagger and Protector's blood to reawaken the talisman's electricity. However, earlier than restoring Haken's powers, she well-known shows that his guilt is preserving him. Lower back, his remorse over the harmless lives misplaced due to him is blockading his reference to the talismans till we could cross of this burden. The powers will now no longer absolutely be given him. Later as they leave, Zeynep reassures Haken that the one's deaths had been now no longer his fault and he should not blame himself. Decided to discover the reality, Haken is going to an antique fort wherein Levent has requested him to return back. He recalls traveling this area as a child and is aware of its shape properly while Zeynep insists on going with him. Hakan refuses, understanding that if Levent senses a entice he won't display himself and they might lose their best hazard to locate the method. Reluctantly Zeynep concurs to stay in the back of while Hakan and Levent eventually meet. Hakan attempts to purpose with him, urging him to prevent this insanity. However, Hakan's powers are completely restored, more potent than earlier. Than with the place in hand, they without delay acquire everyone and devise a method to infiltrate the web page. Earlier than heading internal, Han and Zabe proportion a short second acknowledging the struggle beforehand. As soon as internal, a fierce combat erupts amidst the chaos. Zabe manages to knock Levent subconscious and Hakan gets rid of Morgan. In the meantime, Faisal tries to cause with Ru'aya, urging her to desert this destruction and begin a brand new. He assures her that it is now no longer too past due for them to go away the whole thing behind and stay peacefully, but Ru'aya stays steadfast in her project. At that second, Hakan arrives, however earlier than he can. In truth, Faisal warns him now no longer to make a circulate or Zaynep could be killed. As Hakan prepares to assault, Faisal shoots Zaynep and escapes with Ru'aya. As Zaynep weakens, she urges Hakan to recognition on preventing the immortals as opposed to demanding approximately her suffering to respire. She reminds him that they have already disrupted the immortals' plan and tells him now no longer to overthink. In spite of her tries to live sturdy, she loses focus. Hakan, devastated, clutches her tightly, unable to keep returned his tears. In the meantime, Levent reaches the river, getting ready to launch the components. Simply as he is ready to pour it into the water, the seventh and very last immortal fires a sniper shot at him. The display fades to black, marking the dramatic quit of Season 2.